When countries and sovereigns start to hoard gold, they're preparing for something. It is in preparation for a new global balance of power, a new order. So welcome everyone. Welcome Greg. Thank you for coming to the Zug office, and thank you to the team for setting up actually the new Zug media office. Involved a bit of a road trip last night to the Italian border, but the guys made it happen, so really very appreciative, and yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mirko. Obviously, we had a great discussion before, and I think I'm excited about this because, you know, Onyx has been doing a lot of media in oil, and that's always been our focus. But of course, the world's changing, the world's developing, electricity markets, energy markets are obviously expanding, and we need to be an authority in not just oil, right? We need to move to electricity, power, gas style complexes. And you, Ante, big geniuses, big understanding, a lot of experience, and excited to bring that to the world. And this will be the point of the Zug Media studio, and hopefully there's a lot more content to come, and long form, short form. And so, yeah, we just got to get started, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Back when we had our first podcast, certainly wasn't sure that President Trump would be number 47. That has happened. And it's fair to say the first 30 days were quite eventful. The choices that have been made, I think, lead us onto a path which will need a coming together of global powers. After the Napoleonic Wars in Europe, it was exactly this, the Congress of Vienna, which brought about, basically you can say 100 years of peace on our continent, which for a long time, if one is a student of history, lots of bloodshed. And I think if the globe, with America, with China / with the Chinese-Russian alliance, the global South rising, Europe really needs to get its act together if it wants to have a proper seat at that. I mean, we call it Congress of Vienna, whatever shape that may be in the future. It is necessary. And then the question is, how will Europe actually approach its seat? What will it be? Will it just be kind of finger wagging and saying, oh, you guys are all terrible and we're the best? While actually this is being said by commissars from Brussels, while the sovereign states of Europe, whether that's in southern parts or in Central European parts or in Eastern Europe, might have vastly different views as to how much power Brussels at the moment has over them.
So I think that will resonate with people, right? I think it's very well understood that there is a reshaping going on, and it's kind of more towards the end of a conflict rather than necessarily an impending conflict. That is how it feels. How is the new global order going to take place? And again, what might resonate with people is Ray Dalio got very popular 5 or so years ago with his books and his kind of transparency on how he created theses and regimes. And he's very vocal that he felt that it was a decline of an empire in the US and the beginning of a new empire, of which during that transition historically, you have a conflict and you have a shift in currency or world currency, base currency. And I wanted to explore that a little bit with you. But I guess staying on this theme, this new shake-up, Congress of Vienna, I think that's a really nice way to...
For the 21st century.
For the 21st century. And the backdrop is we have a Europe that doesn't really work in terms of its, essentially, I guess, could you argue, being asleep at the wheel for not seeing what's going on, and there's a lot to dig into there. Complacency. But let's define what that means in the context of markets, right? That's the expertise. So when we say that, I mean, what are you thinking?
So to give context to that, I would say, good intentions, but where do they lead, and what is the end results of these good intentions that many times get proclaimed? I mean, you can start from the creation of this coal and steel union in Europe, which was post World War II, we learned our lessons from World War One. You kind of, if the Western value alliance, which certainly America was the leading part of freedom and liberty, it might be a bit more messy than other forms of government, but it's the best way of kind of efficient price finding for everything. And so in the European sense right now, what I fear is happening is we are having way too much regulation, way too many so-called judges, and way too few people doing things.
So if we bring that to prices in the markets, and are you talking about the formation of tariffs and the protectionism and the policy that has essentially been keeping an area, going quite well? There's been a lot of reinvestment, a lot of debt accumulation, which has given the kind of it looks like you're growing, it looks like there's a lot going on, but really there's a ticking time bomb of debt, and really there's nothing underlying the economy, because really you're lacking free trade and you're getting less and less competitive. The sustainability policies are rising, putting a massive rise on energy prices. All the while, things are getting a lot more efficient around you, and you're so reliant on Russian gas. That's kind of how I've heard you talk before. That was obviously the sleeping dog.
Well, that was the sleeping dog. I mean, this complacency, right? So the old system, and we talked about it in our first chat, was Central Europe gets relatively cheap energy. We have some good engineers, we have good rule of law, and then we created some great products, and we were able to export them, and kind of an export-led growth, right? The German kind of model of a social market economy, which more so than in the West, well, in the American part of the West, even well, I guess the UK is now also on the same path, but you have safety nets. You want to give everybody an opportunity that if one falls, that he's able to stand up, that he's able to re-educate themselves, that he doesn't have to worry about where his next meal comes from. But this will only work, let's say, in this context of a larger Europe, if there's enough value created, if there's enough development, right? And what I fear, and what we see is basically the regulations and the imposition of non-free market principles continues to rise.
Yep.
While the others are basically saying, guys, this is not for us. I mean, we understand that you want to go towards a non-polluting future. I would say, right? That's, of course, we should all strive for that. But at the same time, we want to be around an economy that has a growth potential that is not hampered by regulation, by declining demographics, which we have, and by basically this principle of non-competition, of going towards the least common denominator here in Europe, and it's very scary to see that.
But I guess of the backdrop of rewind, I think you only have to go back to, say, 2019. Things are growing. We're in a okay spot. This is pre-COVID. The energy prices are completely different to what they are today. You have a lot lower energy base, so industry is, very, I would not say like efficient in terms of how cheap it was, but certainly cheap enough for everything to be flying. It's not the impeding factor.
Yes, the growth.
You've got innovation, you've got a lot of engineering, you've got the best universities, Europe and UK, you've got basically everything going for it for economic growth.
Yes.
But what's happening is a lot of spending, government spending on more towards socialism style things, more welfare. Okay, fine. You're accumulating more debt. But again, it's like in trading. It's like when you say, I'm doing all these things as a market maker. I'm buying this, I'm selling that, I'm doing that, I'm doing it. But you have to say, okay, you just did 100 trades, and you need to define what's the good leg, we call it, right? What's the one thing that's actually making you the money? Because if that disappears, all these hundreds of trades, you're basically getting into this one final trade to monetize, and if it's not there, it's gone. And your whole basically trading operation cannot be monetized because of this one good leg. So in a way, that's how I'm looking at what you're saying, and the kind of economic engine for the last 10 years with Europe, they basically, no one seemed to realize how important energy was in that jig. They thought they had everything, and we did have everything. The jigsaw of innovation, engineering, like I'm saying, the debt pile, the kind of European Union, the power of that trade union, like everything going for it. But the good leg, if you like, was the cheap energy prices. It's not just about Russia, even though of course that was the instigator. We were trying to aggressively change tack to be renewable, not understanding the intermittency problems, not understanding the reliability we have still as a world order on the areas where there's resources, coming to the areas where there are no resources, and getting really down this political pathway, of course, sustainability, cutting oil and gas licenses, all in the name of, as you say, good intentions, but ultimately not thought through, and then increasingly relying on this good leg of cheap energy. And as soon as that broke down, it basically revealed the truth, which is if you're not competitive with energy prices, it doesn't matter how innovative you are, it doesn't matter about your engineering talent, or your bureaucracy, or the costs you're spending cannot be funded because you're spending too much for energy. And guess what? The growing emerging markets that are growing more intelligent, they're getting more and more IP all the time, their universities are getting better, they've got the cheap gas, they've got the cheap energy, and they're gonna be competitive more than you know it. And then you've got the flip side of US, which was already smashing it, can smash it even more because their gas prices, their electricity prices are just on a more order of magnitude lower, and stayed an order of magnitude lower in the entire Russia crisis. And that is really why we've led to where we are.
I think it has become cripplingly so. If the main leg that you were standing on sawed away, breaks down.
Well, why don't we jump then to we can always go back and forth. I think gas prices right now. The theme this year was get long gas. The fundamentals are saying there's not enough storage. The demand's there. The LNG is short. We've got a supply shock coming, and then just like that, we've got potentially all this supply coming back almost immediately, like it can be with gas. And that was the good leg, right? The good leg was relying on it not being there.
Will it come back? So I think, look, 2022 was a pivotal year, where basically, as we spoke about in our first session, was the German government / European governments decided, come what may, we are bid, we will fill our storages, we will not be intimidated. We will just simply not allow ourselves to be.
And we'll use our coffers for that.
And we will use our coffers for that, and come what may. But we will also basically give continuous meddling into the markets. For then, one can make that argument, a very valid reason. You are in war. War demands certain actions, and those actions were taken. And obviously, one of the legacies of this is, the order from the commissariat in Brussels saying, guys, you need to fill up your storages. This is basically, you need to be at 90% by then and then.
So we're never vulnerable to a price shock again, or someone's cutting off the supply again, type thing.
Well, yes, but within that act, lay the current price rise.
So you kind of self-fulfilling, but at least from if we ignore price, the logic was, from a supply's perspective, don't be put in a vulnerable position. So we're going to mandate storage filling, essentially.
Yes, and we will basically reimburse you if you have to, in our lingo, lift some crazy bits, which certainly was the case in 2022. Coming back now to, I guess we can say it started, end of Q3. The rally on especially on the gas markets, we were at some 25-30 euros, and basically the thesis of many analysts who have some amazing stack models for the gas markets came to the conclusion, okay, you know what? We're just going to front run. We're going to front run European gas storage filling levels, right? And
because we can see that the need to fill the storage, coupled with the current demand
it's
forecast.
Mandated.
No, I'm saying coupled with the fact that there is not enough supply ultimately, coupled with the fact that you've got increasing sanctions in the Biden administration as they left, and suddenly you're saying you're going to have to get all this marginal storage or the marginal molecule to put into storage from LNG. That doesn't really, you're running out of LNG to lift. Everything's on term deals, what's in the spot market. And so what I'm saying is, yes, it's a big driver, but if there was plenty of supply, we wouldn't have a problem. It's because there's lack of supply as well. So
yes, and the perception of that lack of supply, and especially, let's say, during 23 and 24, you had very mixed signals from the Biden administration, saying, for one thing, oh, we'll have all the LNG guys for everybody that we need, but the projects in Louisiana, not so much. So and then obviously this, for a continent that's having a major conflict with hundreds of thousands of people dying, was a very bad news. And since we are traders, this created a new reality. The new reality was that, oh, we actually cannot count on that LNG, and especially it wasn't even so much the spot LNG availability, but it was the perception of the years that are coming that not as many projects will come online as is necessary.
This is what interests me
and this
so
is
much.
A game.
Yeah, it's a game, but it's also the complexity of gas, right? Because I think that
it's going global.
It is, but what I'm saying is in oil, I know oil is also opaque and people say, I'm not sure what's going on, but it is easier to understand. There's a big pool of oil that you can just bring over with ships, and there's so much going around, so many countries. Gas is a different story. There's such complexity in the pipelines that can be so intricately controlled that you can switch it off and minutes later you've got a ridiculous price. I mean, that doesn't, you don't really have that in oil. You'd have to have an explosion for that to have an impact in oil. And then I think if you say, well, hang on, there's LNG in Qatar, there's all these places. All that LNG is the big rage to supply, to redistribute what was bought from Russia. But not understanding that a lot of these builds for LNG terminals and LNG exports are done on term deals, and there was a lot of lifting, like you said, from the governments already to supply what actually excess capacity there was, excess supply there was, it's been bought already. So when these sanctions came again at the back end of last year or the beginning of this year, you're like, this can't be real, because you've just squeezed ourselves again, just as we were getting out of this situation in Europe. You've now said, let's go again. And then I've heard that Biden didn't know that his administration had banned the LNG exports from US. That was the only marginal molecule left to come. But then on top of that, even if you then reverse it, which Trump did immediately, there is not enough.
The damage is done.
It's not just the damage is done. As you said, there isn't enough excess LNG to just go, yeah, you'll buy more LNG off US. There isn't the LNG to buy to supply what you need with your storage mandates.
But especially not to supply the fear of the market.
But people, I think generically people will say, just buy US LNG. I mean, there isn't enough there. It's committed.
Yeah. And look, I mean, this is the classic. We're in a world where it takes huge upfront capital expenditures to bring molecules onto ships, onto LNG ships, and then to bring those molecules across the world, and then to create from molecules electrons, right? And then, as you said, I mean, these very conflicting signals coming from America, combined with finally, some would say, General Winter making an appearance, and General Dunkelflaute, a very German word which means basically no wind. When you have 45, 60 gigs of wind installed, and then no mass wind for days on end, and you turned off your nukes, you turned off a lot of coal plants, that is simply a recipe for disaster. And this comes to the meddling in the markets.
So let me set you up again, because I think this is what's super interesting for me. I'm going to sound a bit crass here, but the way as I would explain the current situation of the last few years, 5 years with Europe are a trader's dream. If you're a physical trader and a financial trader in energy markets, they are the best participant to come into the market. Why? One, you've already said it, they price take. Traders love price takers. Why? Because if you pre-position and see this lumbering big position taker coming towards you, you go, all right, buy, he's coming, and then you sell. And if you can rely on that person to signal to the market they're going to buy, signal to the market they're going to buy any price, What do you think you're going to do? You're going to front run, like you said, in mad kind of volume, both financially and physically. So that has been a glorious dream for traders. Okay, you could say 2022, that was a shock, but since 2022 with these policies, if you've got a big position to shift, and politicians do not understand it, they have to understand they are traders. They are buying things, they are selling things, they are supplying, they're financing, they're providing the capital.
They're not paying it out of their own pockets.
But they are. That's like saying a hedge fund trader is not paying out of his own product. They've got the taxpayer, which is the investor, and they are the portfolio manager, and they are the worst trader the world has ever seen. And then they're stumbling around and they're signaling to market what they're going to do. People then front run them, and it's just bad. Not only what else are they poor at? They are showing their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities constantly. That they're also, it's very transparent with the debt, how many bullets they have. It's all well and good saying, all right, you want to go? Right, mandate across the board, buy every excess LNG, we're going to make a big shift here. Look, I respected the move in 2022, but how long can that last? All the traders are looking at Europe saying, you don't have much money left. You can't keep doing that.
And especially not in the current format of your union, right? Because we don't have...
Your economies are struggling. Your democracies are struggling. People are not. People don't want the welfare. People don't want the immigration. You don't have the money to buy yourself out of this problem. So what do you do if you're an opposing trader? I'm using the analogy as a trader.
Yes.
The Russias of this world, the USs of this world go, you guys are making this too easy. Yeah. You need a price, it's up here. You need supply, well, give me this, give me that. Europe has completely lost its bargaining power because I think it doesn't realize that. It doesn't realize it's at a poker table that's trying to go all in and call people's bluffs without the chips.
Hope dies last, I would say. And I think you put it very bluntly and rightly so, because there's no sugarcoating it.
Well, that's usually your style too. I'm trying to pull that out of you as well.
Yes. And let me put it this way. Whether now, because, right, so as you said, the setup is such that basically you're holding up a big sign saying free money for traders. And so you can't be surprised when things happen as they have in the last 6 to 9 months, which is TTF gas positions going almost up to 300 terawatt hours. To put that in context, German demand in a year, 550 terawatt hours, 600 in total, if I'm not mistaken.
In total for the whole year.
Yeah. Right, and so
Jesus, yeah.
And so this has been built up, in anticipation of what you said.
Exactly. Because just to give another analogy, we were talking about it actually on LinkedIn, and obviously it's quite well known. But in the UK, just another example about UK and Europe generally making it easy for traders. You create all this wind farm capacity to supply your grid. You have what's the German word again?
Dunkelflaute.
You have low wind or zero wind and freezing cold temperatures. The guys who can supply you electricity at that point are the gas-fired plants. Not only do they not have to supply you legally, they can actually see you wanting the demand, say, we're not going to supply you unless you pay up here.
Yes.
And we paid 17 million pounds in a day to traders in one day, and that's a regular occurrence. But do you see what I mean? They've got to understand they might hide behind, but we're not traders and it's the market. You've got to get an understanding because you're getting played with. Like this would be a market participant that would be ran out of the market, right?
Absolutely. And I come back a little philosophically. In nature, something that is abhorrent and inefficient does not survive.
Right.
Right. And sometimes, even nature will allow for one season of survival. You get some good rain, you can hide somewhere.
So on that point, so why don't we do it in 2 prongs? Like, how can they survive? But also, firstly, what are they trying to do to survive? Or do you think European leaders in general still don't know that they're in that kind of survival mode, if you like? What are they trying to do right now?
I hope by now they understand this.
Okay.
Right, but hope is a bad strategy, especially for us traders.
But it looks like they're doubling down.
But I do see some slivers of hope. Obviously, one can have a big debate about geopolitical consequences of certain elections and whatnot. But somebody has continuously, how should I say, been able to create the perception we have limitless spending power in Europe, and it's just the party can go on. And I'm saying somebody, it's not one person, it's actually all of us together have arrived kind of at a leadership position from Brussels, which basically acts like there's no bottom to our wallet, right? The sliver of hope that I'm seeing is that actually it looks like, and now whether or not this is because this weekend we're having German elections, and the so-called Wirtschaftsministerium in Germany, which you had some nice articles in the past few weeks for those of us following, without going into detail, certain big shots saying, oh, you know, Europe needs to guarantee a price for storage fillings, and it needs to be good enough for us to basically, I know we won't have a repeat of 2022, but 2024, I mean, at least 50% of what we got in 2022. And this big bag that is being held, actually, it looks like the bluff is being called.
Of course, yeah.
Because Europe actually now is coming to their senses, and it's the duty of our leaders to come to their senses, but they are, it seems, in some cases, saying, okay, we will show some flexibility for our targets, for storage refilling targets. And this has caused the 10 euro dip that we've seen in gas prices.
So you say, when we say the good leg,
I don't know, maybe it's even 12 now. We don't know. The guys next door could tell us. But so it actually might be the fact that Europe is saying, okay, we're not just going to blindly be a price lifter like we were before. We will show some flexibility. And secondly, you know, how should I say? Again, it's such a classic one. The cure for high prices are high prices. And we just can't take it anymore. And the public will not stand for it. And I think that's why we are having very serious discussions in the European Union. And it's happening on a high enough level where the Vice Minister of Energy of Italy is saying, guys, we should probably think about some of our sustainability targets and tools.
But that's what I was getting at. So if I play this out, you've been saying this for a while. You said this last podcast, you've been saying this for essentially a year.
Well, I've been saying it since 2022.
Sure, but as in like I think you were thinking this should be materializing in the market in the near term.
Yeah.
And so I guess looking at it right now, it's almost like the Big Short style, you know, the film, the book, you know, you have people starting to wake up and realize, you know, the equivalent of, you know, defaults in mortgages and all these rates suggesting it's unsustainable. People starting to wake up to these ideas was kind of last year. Now you're getting into that phase of like, no, it really is the time. What are you going to do about it? And I think, as you say, the pressure's there from the public, from generally speaking, public spend and high energy prices. But I guess what we haven't seen, which we're seeing literally now, is the few key articles. Italy, you said, came out and said, do we really need this European trading system, this carbon?
ETS, and it's again, it has done a lot of great things, but it has reached its limits, and it's a punishment at this
because
sort.
it's going so high, it's so expensive, on top of expensive prices.
Exactly.
This is killing us. We can't be competitive, essentially. So on top of having uncompetitive wholesale prices, we've got uncompetitive retail prices, because you have to, before you even get to duties and taxes, you have to add this carbon element, which is killing us.
And it's
other
the
areas
price
don't
signal.
have.
And it's the price signal that we're sending internationally, basically saying, guys, we're going to regulate. We're going to tax.
But it's a very real live tax that's getting higher and higher.
Yes, and I mean, in Germany, apparently it has been decided in Parliament, and this was done 2 weeks ago. Actually, the carbon levy on fuel, heating fuel, next year is rising again quite significantly, and so another shock is coming.
Well, but what I'm saying is that's the outlay, and that's obviously the thesis of why we are where we are and why it's going to get worse. But just keeping on the survival kind of logic, you would say, you know, you need to absolutely destroy this carbon mechanism. The price is just, you know, huge, 75. It needs to be like it was 8, not 75. You know, that kind of stuff. There's also, we need more supply, fine, but that's quite a key one. We need to relax the storage mandates. And those, let's just say those two key things, we have heard both those things. It was the Germans, haven't they, have said, people are coming out, I mean, multiple countries have said, we need to relax this.
Yes.
Publicly.
And it's actually
no, but I'm just they have said that publicly.
Yes.
And Italy have said publicly what's going on with this carbon price.
Yeah.
This is big because this is publicly saying it. This is obviously said behind doors a few months ago. Now it's public pressure. So we are on the inflection point where
Fork in the road.
Well, Europe could go into survival mode, and let's just say the right survival mode. We don't know if it's right, but your argument would be if you do these things, it is going to ease the pressure. You can get back in the fight. And it does look like they're going to do it. So when we talk about trade expression, well, Germany come out and say we're going to reduce the mandates, or EU do, right? Price drop $10. That's a huge drop, right? And in a long market. And in carbon, it's the same thing. The more signaling we get, the more it should lead to basically price dips in both markets very long. But if it's a huge signal, as in we are, I guess, abolishing or something like that, you're talking a complete repricing.
And it will be digital, and it will be very binary from that standpoint. And if you take the two pillars, natural gas, and if we take the carbon price, which are basically causing us to be 3 to 4 times more expensive than the United States of America for power prices. Mm-hmm. This is a fact. This is irrefutable, and no new paper from some institute saying that yes, but if we continue on this road in 20 years' time, we won't have any fuel costs and it'll be nirvana. Again, how will we survive until then? And by survival, I mean, look, you don't want to be too cynical, and
I think maybe surviving their role at the table, as in surviving as a power player.
But yes, as a coherent voice on the global stage, right? Because if we are poor...
Voice, I don't know. Voice, they're always heard, but it's more about can they do something?
Well, yeah, backed up by power, by real world power projection, right? And whether that's kinetic or cyber or whatever. Yeah. But to my point, basically saying that at the end, and just as an anecdote, because I come from a country that actually lived with communism, and some would call it, but Yugoslavia, it was a soft form of communism, it was fantastic, and you have a lot of people who actually have nostalgia towards that. And I can say fair enough to some of the intercultural kind of keeping the peace between warring factions of clans. Yes, it worked. But towards the end of Yugoslavia and towards the end of the Soviet Union, which was, communism times 2 or times 3, when the revolutions were taking place, and these are apparently true stories, but it fits perfectly. You had to protest, whether those were in Hungary, Czech Republic, and then later in Poland, the Solidarność. You had commissars calling the shoe factories and saying, guys, we need 500,000 new shoes as soon as possible, because the people that we're going to send to counter-protest and kind of talk us up, be our hype crew, they need new shoes. Otherwise, they can't walk there. Little do they know, Berlin Wall is falling. So they're still living in their own world, writing a bunch of papers, coming up with new crazy ideas on how to basically project their power upon their societies, because they know better, because they're the intellectual so-called elite. And it's very scary for me to see. And it's not like, look, I grew up very fortunate, but it's very scary to see that we have not learned our lesson. Like, efficient price finding and markets are a cornerstone of the human development. And coming back to nature, it doesn't have a price, but it has the signals. If a species survived, it means it's doing something well. Or it had bad luck and you had a meteor strike it, but okay. But apparently now we're even, in some papers saying even when the meteor struck, some dinosaurs still lived for a few thousand more years, right? Because they were smaller, they were able to adapt. And to me, it's incredible, and obviously to Ante as well, who's from Croatia, which used to be part of Yugoslavia, is to see that instead of recognizing pure, hard, cold logic, some of these commissars are actually doubling down and tripling down, and it's very scary.
So I guess the backdrop of, if we can ease mandates, we can do these things, we can set ourselves a new trajectory, versus, no, we keep going. And
We'll make it worse.
And we'll make it, but again, does it just, everything, don't want to say everything comes back to money, but the money in this scenario, it can work if you can afford it. But I guess the why I think this short-term to medium-term thesis is compelling is because we've reached that inflection point of you just don't have the money to fund it anymore. All the economic growth that you're seeing in the data is driven by new employment in governments, not by, these are false signals of economic growth. And the money isn't there. So how are you going to sustain this? And I think that's the evidence of what we're seeing. So in the current, that's why I think we say there's a repricing thesis here, i.e. everything lower, and there's also a redefining.
For the curve especially.
Well, yes, but I'm saying that, a lot of the European energy complex system and even oil is soaked in tariffs and duties and taxes that goes against the rest of the energy world, US and Asia, especially in the Middle East.
It's sabotage. At some point, one has to ask, why are we sabotaging ourselves?
But the reason why it's sabotage is because it's a big premium on top, essentially, which makes you less competitive. You're closing all your refineries.
Well, the premium is there because of that.
That's what I'm saying, but as in, just to make this clear in the context, you're basically diminishing your competitive edge because people are getting more intellectual property and getting more competitive with their workforce, and their populations are growing. Europe's population is declining, reliant much more on immigration, whilst the energy prices are expensive and you've bolted on a premium. And you're really at this point where it's been the sleeping dog for a while, but now we're saying, guys, if we keep down this route, we're talking bond prices collapsing, yields roofing, inflation going berserk. And everyone says that's like a global thing. It's like, why? As a trader, we're pretty bullish US, we're pretty bullish Asia. We think they're okay. This is a long US, Asia, short Europe. And I don't think that's a controversial thing. I think that's what all investors are talking about. But that inflection point of, do we double down or not? But if you double down, we're getting back to politics, because if you double down, you go into the next round of elections, you say, well, if Reform or AFD and all these guys, they're going to campaign on, I will make things more free markets, I will get our energy prices lower. And essentially, that's the real inflection point. Who does people vote for? Because if they go down that route, we are kind of getting back into redefining this. If you double down, that means we are going to continue with the current European carbon pricing mechanisms, the cancelling of oil and gas licenses. Basically, we're going to squeeze ourselves more and more and more. And it's not so much about prices being high. Let's be clear; they will be high. But you could say,
as a consequence, what are you getting for those high prices?
They could actually be low as well, but they'll still be a big premium to the rest of the world. Yes. And it's about being competitive against the rest of the world.
Yes. And look,
you're talking about gold. Gold's also a good indication here.
When countries and sovereigns start to hoard gold, they're preparing for something.
Yeah.
Right, and now, obviously, you can go on a long tangent about gold and the safety of it, and I believe you spoke about Ray Dalio. It is in preparation for a new global balance of power, a new order, because nature does not allow for chaos to reign for too long, right? And so just like in geopolitics, and because of that, just like in nature, geopolitics has to rearrange itself.
Yeah.
And
well, I think another scary thing for Europe right now is the US, the Trump administration is signaling very clearly, I think, that Russia is a more reliable trading partner than Europe.
The potential of Russia, without going into politics, obviously, are its massive resources. It's land-based. It's at the heart of Eurasia. Culturally, and that whole region the Nobel Prizes from physics to math to et cetera, very capable people. And what people in the West and we have been part of this, have been very fortunate to live in peace and prosperity, forget is that not everybody is the same, and the level of suffering that some are able to accept is vastly higher than what we have in Europe. Vastly higher in Western Europe. I would say I come from a country that had to fight a lot on its own to get its independence, and now Croatia is a fully fledged member of the European Union. It's in the Schengen, it has the euro, it's part of NATO, and then what? It's all going to fall apart now? Hopefully not. But having said that, we will not be able to continue as we are right now.
I understand, but I think the point is that we're letting, this is why I've said before, and I still believe very passionately, politicians need to learn that they are traders effectively. They're big asset-backed players. They need to learn a lot from traders, because the traders aren't judging in terms of, it's not about having a political view. It's about saying it as it is to predict the next move. And this is what we're being signaled to. This is what we think is going to happen. We think trade is going to be the be-all and end-all, and that's what Trump seems to all be about. That's the China, the Russia, the US kind of conglomerate, the Middle East. They all want to trade. Europe are still deciding where they want to fit on that. But
we want to regulate apparently in Europe.
Well, look, this, again, I'm trying to be like, you've got your views, I've got mine, people have got theirs. It's not about being political in the sense of like what I think is right or wrong. We're trying to lay out the complex, how it is for markets. That's our expertise. And I think if we go back to that, let's talk about right now. So I think, as you said, our big theme here is people are aware of the supply and demand balances going forward. They're aware of the low wind, very cold weather, the situation. They can see the balances are screwed with the sanctions. There's not enough LNG. Right, you buy. You're front running these purchases of storage from Germany and Europe. And okay, that's where we're at. But we're also now let's look at the trader and the trader complex. They already made that decision. They've already done relatively well out of that. Where do we go from here? Because they are holding the bag, as you put it. This is commitment of traders, data. We know, everyone knows, speculatively, the market in gas is incredibly long.
It's daddy long, yes.
And this is the same with carbon as well.
Carbon as well, but it's lagging in that length. But for instance, since the last time that we spoke, because carbon is basically, and when you read some of the articles, you actually can't believe it, but it's a proxy hedge for some people for inflation, right? And so carbon has built up 100 million tons from its lows.
It's been a good inflation hedge, right? It's been a good, if you think this Europe's going to keep going this way, well, then you need that protection.
Yes.
But again, going back to the now, this becomes a thing when you go into the industry. And again, to give transparency over the industry players, right? I mean, they have a big position on, and suddenly this is what I think makes traders different to investors as well as other things. Big book balance sheet traders, they can't afford they can't be in and out. They're not high frequency traders. They have their positions are way too big. They have to have a big long-term thesis, and they have to let the market come to them to enter these, and they have to let the market come to them to exit.
Yes.
So the thesis was all playing out very well for them. And I would say we were getting very close, if not already in profit-taking territory. You're getting signaling from big market participants and their CEOs saying, guys, it's so bullish. That's usually a good indication that they want to get rid of it, but the thesis has been proved, so it's been priced in, so they're happy to kind of exit. But now they're left holding this bag, and you've had these big drops, and you might say, well, yeah, this is what you factor into gas in your risk management, right? We price in huge volatility. This is the market we chose.
We went to 300.
We went to 300, of course. Okay, but these negotiations, no one can disagree. This is such a big change in factor, and everything we're talking about, Europe potentially making game-changing decisions right now, do filter into the price. But you have a long market. So what do these huge participants do? We're talking about the options they've got. A big long position. Do you sell out the money calls? Do you basically crush all the basically insurance buying you're getting or hedging to kind of effectively have an offset? Do you sell calendar? Do you sell everything in deferred? You need to sell something. But if you sell what you have, and you're a big player, you will set a domino effect in a market like this that will just crush your position. So they can't do that. So it's more likely we're in a propping up phase. Is that fair to say?
Texas Hold'em comes to mind.
Yeah.
You know, the last card has been flipped.
It's like just after the flop, right? It's it's not quite the river. It's just getting there, right?
Well, we've seen the flop in Texas Hold'em. You see the first three, you're holding two, and you're going to get two more cards. President Trump, President Putin.
The ultimate river would be the end, or the defining of the restructuring
signals,
of flows,
right?
And the signals are
and the signals are there that very clearly President Trump has stated he wants to bring energy prices down in the US, which are already low, but also globally, right? And the fact is, very much on the molecule world, on the oil market, he wants stable prices, but he wants lower prices, right? And for that, you simply need Russia. There's no way around it. It's much like the Chinese premier at the Munich Security Conference saying, guys, and for me, this was a massive statement, basically saying, guys, who else should we buy all this gas and oil from? But from Russia.
I know, obviously, Trump is very unpredictable, and that's why it makes markets so.
Well, he's a negotiator.
He is, but I think one thing, well, at least from my perspective, I think it's yours as well, where he is reliable is if he has said
he makes
for a long
a deal.
He wants low energy prices. He is an old school American. He's like almost 80 years old. He's grown up with oil being the most important thing in an economic world. He's very obsessed with the oil price and gas prices as well, but I think oil is a global metric. He wants that lower.
Yes.
How does he get it lower? I don't think anything else matters, which is crazy
because it actually will trickle down positively.
But Mirko, what I'm trying to say is I think listeners in Europe and UK, we all, culturally how we were brought up, that is unheard of, right? That this is why I think Trump's such a wild card, because we are not meant to be, the West is not meant to be just so ruthless about trade. It's meant to be our viewpoint on the world. It's the wars we get into, the investments we make, the sustainability, whatever. We're trying to progress the world, if you like, quotation marks, and whatever that means. So for someone to say, I literally don't care, I am a trader and I'm going to trade and make money, it is pretty hard to, I think, but once you do understand that, it makes him a little bit more predictable. As you say, everything's a negotiation.
We're going towards a mercantilistic era in that sense.
Okay.
Right?
Good way of defining it, yeah.
We are, right? And it's just a reality wake up for everyone.
You definitely have a way of words. Mercantil era.
So mercantilistic.
Yeah, as in like a trading era.
Yes. Yeah. And some people say this, this is so insulting. No, it's not. No, it's not. Why would it be insulting to say that?
Because they're making it political. They're not looking at the objective.
Well, they're making it political because they're price takers. They don't have a plan.
No, but you've got to go back to people and the way they live their lives. I mean, it's hard to find someone who doesn't have a political allegiance to some form.
And it's very unfortunate.
Well, it is what it is. But what I'm saying is like, we're not talking about your allegiances, and let's detach from that and say these are the cards. But even that's offensive to say. Yes. How dare you talk about the world like it's some poker game? Yeah. Well, I don't know what to say. This is how people move. This is how people act. This is human action, right?
As opposed to what? I mean.
Well, unless you make a bet that maybe we do go towards a different system, but that would be a bet in itself, right? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and again, and we can pivot to our start, and I think this is really an important aspect, is that one of the reasons why you guys were able to actually come to Zug, to a place where arguably it's one of the wealthiest areas in the world per square meter. Right, it's also one of the safest. It's also one of the cleanest. There's reasons for that, right? And one of the reasons is really hardcore free markets, right? And cold, hard deliberations about what we need and what we don't need, right? And unfortunately,
Europe's still stuck in their mindset.
But you know what? I'm seeing slivers of hope, right? But one of the slivers of hope needs to be the recognition that and we take the gas storage levy, or we take the carbon market, they cannot be an end in and of themselves. Like these are things that should serve us, right? So the carbon market, great, let's decarbonize, let's make it cleaner. By the way, you built all this intermittent energy. It should have been mandated, if you're going to mandate all these things, that you need to build a battery right next to that, right? So that you can have circularity.
No, but you can forgive things like this because this is transition to change and not being aware of it.
But
you
20
can't-
years of forgiveness.
Exactly, you can't, exactly.
It doesn't work.
You have to...
Right? Like how long, when do you I'm a parent, so at what point do you have to start putting your foot down?
But that's what I'm saying, is then you can forgive the initial, say...
Exuberance of morality
and,
and Gutmensch, as we say in Germany.
Here's the market signaling, you've not got this wrong necessarily, it's you've got to rethink these things and learn. And yes, move too fast, but these things have been known for a while now, and there's no pullback. It's worrying about getting elected and saying the right things, and it's destroying their own market without realizing it.
You know? Well, I think the writing it's not even neon green anymore. It's like, I don't know, is there even neon black? I don't know, maybe. But the writing truly is on the wall. And some of the slivers of hope that you see is, for instance, in this concoction, the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, hopefully in the, how should I say, recognition of cold hard facts of bureaucracy, they have said that basically 80 or 90% of participants will be taken out. You don't have to do any paperwork, you don't have to do nothing, because emissions come from the top 10, 15% anyways. Good, the recognition of that, because again, coming to, the kind of, the Brussels enigma, basically, of the bureaucratic animal saying that we will be 90% emissions reductions by 2030, 2040, whatever. Great goal, but what will be left? What will be left of our industry? Because if the others are not following, and they're not following in imposing punitive, because it's a tax in the end, punitive carbon taxes.
Yeah, we can't afford because we don't have the economic growth and
no, but
energy
it's
prices
not only,
and blah, blah, blah.
it's not only not we can't afford, it's because nobody else is doing it. And the others that are doing it, prices not only are much lower, but they're doing it in a safe sort of way.
You could say, well, we'll do it anyway because we're world leaders and we want to do this and we're going to do it anyway. But if you can't afford it,
well, you won't be around.
You stop being a world leader.
Yeah.
And then there are world leaders who aren't doing it. Well, at least you can say, well, I did my bit. And that's the risk here for Europe, is that they'll die on their sword, right? Which is, commendable. But it's like that's where, well, I don't want to get, this is what I'm saying, it's not about political allegiance. It's about saying it as is. So let's put, our money where our mouth is. We've got to get forecasting now. And that's fair.
Because forecasting, so when we're dealing with markets, you have to consider the political winds. Starting at the unfortunate beginning of this war is the fact that cold hard reality that Europe is a price taker in most things.
Yep.
So, great. Europe wanted to create a situation where wants to make everybody else a price taker in carbon, because we're saying, okay, how wonderful, we have this great idea, we have a carbon market, hot air, and actually if you want to export your products into Europe, which is kind of the old way of looking at the development of nations, or we will need Europe as our markets, otherwise we in Africa, we in Southeast Asia cannot develop. Not true anymore. They have other markets to go to, and they actually want to grow themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So they're creating economic systems that, I mean, in old Pentagon lingo, you have the functioning core of the Western system, which is kind of protecting the major choke points in the world, whether that's Suez, whether that's Panama, whether that is around Singapore, and then kind of going towards having at least, let's say, major trading hubs being safe, secure, rule of law, contractual, disputes get carried out in court, not with a sword or with a gun. Yeah. So that's the functioning core. And then in between that, you have like a middle part, and then you have the non-functioning outside world, so to say. Well, actually, these two parts are growing themselves now, right? And they have, one almost has to say it this way, they have their own champion in China, in Russia.
Yeah, but come on,
in America, because America is now departing from this path of let's be destructive, let's create defeat for the major powers, and we will be the only ones. No, America is very clearly saying this is a multipolar world. We're one of the largest poles, but we need to look at the reality of what is.
Okay, so that lays up the backdrop, the wins, perfect. So how do we see this playing out in the markets? I think there's macro indicators, right? You've been saying for a while, the German economy in particular has been in recession. It's avoided recession statistics because of bureaucracy, growth, government hiring.
I have a feeling that after the elections, a lot of numbers will be revised.
Okay, and they are when?
This Sunday in Germany.
So very near term, we're talking here.
Yes.
Some big shifts in thinking, and there's some decent time to save face as well. If people actually agree, but they had to maintain this line of thinking to stay in line with that, they can now pull back on the backdrop of elections. So they can be useful in that respect, I would say. So it's a very important time right now. We think that yes, that essentially the powers that be within basically Europe have realized they are on top of this. Is that fair to say? Not on top of it. They do know. So what are the next things? They have to start getting the public to acknowledge the reality. Is it after elections, whatever else? Then what? Then we think it's carbon, right? We think there's going to be more signaling towards reducing this.
So I would say the following. It's probably a situation of realization on top and a blanket realization in the population that, holy crap, things are not going well if we continue on the road that we are.
Yes, but what I'm saying is from a trade.
Yes, from a trading perspective, well, again, either we will live free speech, liberty, free markets, or we will have a union led by commissars who will make more laws and more laws and more laws, and they will be an end to themselves, and we will basically be, parent number one, parent number two. And this is no bueno. This is not going to create economic growth.
In that scenario, carbon prices go higher,
no,
right?
but this is, so I think specifically, if we are talking about the carbon prices, yes, it's possible that it goes to 120, 150, 200.
Because of this, because I'm saying of the doubling down, right?
Well, and tripling down even.
Yes.
But
you don't think that's going to happen?
Well, I personally don't think that will happen, and there's some nice expressions that one can make in order to hopefully benefit from reason returning to Europe. But if that is not the case, well, then simply said, it will prolong the death of Europe maybe a little bit, right? Because and then people don't know this, but carbon actually, the carbon market with the Green Deal, is actually the first federal income of the European Union, right? And this is really a very big deal that people don't get.
Yeah.
And now when we're talking about the Draghi report, and you have some great clips of Mario Draghi speaking in European parliaments. I don't know what you need to do, but we need to do something, because we're basically in a situation where
do you think from everything you're saying it is likely they're going to give up that federal income then?
Markets have a sense of bringing reality to people. Case in point, the comments from the Italian minister.
Yep.
Case in point, the comments.
But do you think this happens with the elections?
It's hard to say, because look, and who am I? I don't have a crystal ball, and.
But you're a trader, right? You do.
I am a trader. Well, I have.
You try to have a crystal ball, right?
I try to have a crystal. I try to have a crystal ball, and in the 20 years, sometimes it has shown me some correct pathways. But long story short, either the realization kicks in while we can actually still save not only Europe but the carbon market.
Yeah.
Because the carbon market in and of itself is a good thing, because of the pollutant, you are basically saying that wherever possible you want to be efficient in the creation of electrons. So wind, solar with batteries wherever possible, nukes, clean gas, clean coal. I know people are going to say, oh my God, how can you say clean coal? Well, when you need to keep the lights on and you need to grow, that's what you need.
Okay.
But then to come back to our point of actually raison d'être, why we're here, is, well, the conclusions that you come to basically are telling me that this deck is starting to be built in such a way that it's pretty clear where the road of travel will be if we want saving. And it's actually, we're set up in a fantastic way in Europe because we actually brought about, and especially Germany, the growth of renewables. Fantastic, we achieved it. We pulled down our carbon market, and this is where I come back to again, it cannot be an end to itself.
Yeah.
It's a means to an end, and the means to an end has been partly achieved, and right now it's a punishment.
Yeah. Great. So I think obviously a lot of detail there. I think that's just the beginning, right? We've got a lot of content coming in Zug. You've got a big team there who's got endless knowledge and looking at things in very innovative ways. We'll be doing more of that. Good luck with it all. Obviously, I'll be here every so often. I can come back on, but the sauna is now yours, right?
Thank
this
you.
is now the exciting future, and there's just so much to dig into, and it's such a cornerstone of the energy complex, the markets you trade. So look, it's great, and thanks for having me on, and good luck. And yeah,
Thank you, Greg.
for everyone out there, see you next time, right?
See you soon. See you next time, guys.